If you became Prime Minister, what would be the first thing that you would do?
I've just lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
We'll try not to lose our train of thought as we explore some of the mystery of Pauline Hanson's folk dance with the media. Good evening and welcome to Media Watch. There was a time only 6 months ago when the political ginger spice from Queensland had all but shrunk from view.
Among the minor parties, Pauline Hanson's One Nation has dropped to its lowest primary vote since its Bulletin Morgan debut last April, down to 4.5%.
In the face of this disastrous popularity slither, she embarked on some pretty spooky stunts.
If you are seeing me now, it means I have been murdered.
All and sundry were suitably outraged.
A public, pre-recorded death message is not the way to participate seriously in politics in Australia.
The deep level of concern was also taking its toll on some participants.
She is in this tragic redneck celebrity vortex, and from which she does not want to escape.
But the stunts showed that, contrary to the expectations of many political observers, she was not about to slip into oblivion. She'd engaged some savvy, cynical operators, and her machine was cranking into action. David Oldfield may have failed in his quest for the dazzling prize of Mayor of Manly, but he could not have scripted better Pauline's lines for the media.
Raised by a single parent is a classic scenario for an environment to become homosexual. That is statistically proven.
Just knew that.
But you could have also said you're a single parent yourself.
Oldfield understood much more quickly than the journalists and commentators that the appeal of Hansonism had nothing to do with facts or logic. It has everything to do with emotion and fear. 10 days before the Queensland election, Pauline let a few hares loose on the landscape.
This native title is just a precursor to the establishment of a taxpayer-funded Aboriginal state.
This brought a few of the usual suspects out in a rash of fresh admiration.
The Hanson factor is when governments dump on the electorate, the day will come when the electorate dumps on government. That's the Hanson factor, and the electorate is sick and tired of being dumped on.
Piers Ackerman wouldn't vote for her, but he wrote,
She asked the awkward questions others had been too frightened to ask, and for this, she has been pilloried unmercifully by her critics.
And Big Bob Francis, Adelaide's ageing jock, nailed One Nation's colours to his mast.
But I tell you what, I'm voting for Pauline Hanson. I just want to see what that vote can do in Australia here to make the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, and certainly the Democrats, understand that there are lots of people out there who want to see a change in the main style, going Liberal and Labor parties. Yeah. I mean, really, all I can say is politicians give me the shits.
Big Bob must have momentarily forgotten that his heroine is also a politician. One recent entrant who suffered a Pauline conversion was 19-year-old Christina Jones, a cadet scribe with the Gold Coast Bulletin.
I believe Pauline Hanson has some genuine policies to offer. When I walk through Surfers Paradise, I'm bombarded with signs in foreign languages, which annoys me. I haven't had the good fortune to travel overseas, but I would not expect to see a bevy of signs in English in downtown Baghdad.
Normally this would be harakiri journalism, but not so north of the Tweed in this day and age. Yet there was one response to Hanson's claims about Aboriginal sovereignty which really put more gasoline on the flames.
It's not only an inaccurate, dishonest speech, but it verges on the deranged in various places.
The Prime Minister was careful not to say that Pauline was deranged, only her speech. But the genie was out of the bottle, and the Prime Minister was being reported as calling our rapidly blonding heroine deranged.
Pauline Hanson called deranged as the Prime Minister attacks the MP. Prime Minister Howard has described her as deranged and dishonest and has accused her of fanning racist sentiment.
Prime Minister John Howard has delivered his strongest attack on Pauline Hanson, branding her deranged, hysterical and dishonest.
The accumulated effect of the Prime Minister's response and the way the reporting of it was fudged played just splendidly into Pauline's palpitating pause, as she herself knew.
If he's going to call me deranged, well, then he must face the fact that he's calling a lot of other Australians out there, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Australians, as deranged.
Ray was having trouble shooting this tropical fish in the barrel.
The record shows that in 148 votes on important legislation in the federal parliament, you didn't bother voting 100 times.
Ray, I'm not there to make a record for myself, okay? I'm there to make a difference. And I believe that I have made a difference with Australian politics.
Well, that's a great line, but 148 votes and 100 times you weren't even there.
Ray, how do you expect me to go down and vote on possibly some issues? Like I said, the week was one where I totally disagree with both sides of Parliament.
I thought you'd go to Parliament, though, as a parliamentarian to vote, don't you?
Not to make a record, and that's all.
And Uncle Ray felt obliged to defend himself the next night. Far from revealing the perils of Pauline, he discovered she was the darling of his long-suffering viewers.
And to those who complained about my line of questioning, everyone, of course, is entitled to their own opinion. But I would point out that I wasn't questioning Miss Hanson about opinions, but about her so-called facts.
The viewers' reaction was entirely predictable, as her minders knew from the response to a Lateline interview a year ago. Maxine McHugh also thought Pauline would be easy pickings.
Let me tell you what the figures are today, and that is that Asians make up less than 5% of our population. Now, how can that amount to us being swamped?
Because I don't believe that those figures are the true figures.
Well, hang on. We don't. Hang on, just a moment. We don't engage in fantasy on this program. I haven't made that up. Now, that is a figure. You just quoted figures that have gone to the Immigration Department. They are Immigration Department figures. They are Bureau of Stats figures. OK?
Like Uncle Ray, Maxine also thought it necessary to defend herself against viewer outrage.
Many viewers called up afterwards saying I was a bit of a smarty pants.
Recalls McHugh.
But I was simply presenting the real statistics.
What Maxine had not reckoned with was that other people's statistics don't affect this grassroots populism.
She believes the interview turned the tide of opinion about Ms Hanson.
She had had a bloody easy ride, and that was a turning point.
Dear oh me. But of course, what should have sunk in by now was that a large number of Australians preferred Pauline to the likes of the Maxines and Uncle Rays of the world. Journalists to most of the community are akin to pariahs, also known affectionately these days as the elites. Former Pauline advisor John Pasquarelli knew precisely the nature of the game played with the media.
The more she was vilified, the more I saw her support grow.
This equation did not concern the cartoonists, who had a terrific time depicting her variously as Dr. Frankenstein's monster and a tumour sprouting from John Howard's back.
I was hoping it would just go away.
I see a sandwich short of a picnic, a few kangaroos loose in the top paddock, a sausage short of a barbecue, and a screw loose.
And some of the reporters were out in the field just before the Queensland election, giving the decent folk from One Nation a chance to speak for themselves.
So One Nation doesn't believe in the separation of powers?
How do you mean?
But what about the Queensland health budget? How big is that?
The Queensland health budget at the moment, no, I'm not going to quote numbers.
But shouldn't you know those things?
I should know those things, but I'm just telling you I'm not going to quote numbers.
Do you know how many school teachers there are?
No, I'll be honest about that.
What about the annual budget of the Queensland Education Department?
No, I don't know.
But aren't all these things you should know if you're going to be the official spokesperson?
No, I don't believe so.
The best journalistic efforts of Sunday's Paul Ransley must have only added to the attractiveness of the One Nationites. Witness on Channel 7 also showed the One Nation candidates without any gloss.
Meet Dorothy Pratt. She flies the flag, flies a plane, once ran a coffee shop, now she's running her own political campaign. Dorothy is one of them.
Pauline, Ipswich workers' hero. It was all a bit like Chauncey Gardner meets Wag the dog. By the Sunday morning after the election, it was quite clear Pauline had the third largest number of seats in the state. All done in 6 months, starting out with support of 4.5% nationally. And she knew precisely who to thank.
But it was constantly the media and everyone putting me down.
And the media blamed the politicians.
There has been an inadequate attempt by all sides in politics to counter One Nation's influence with a strong and sustained exposition of principle. The proof of this failure was delivered in Queensland.
And the politicians blamed the media.
I think the ones who are getting most hype out of this are you guys in the media. You've given her a wonderful run.
It's the media, you know. The problem is the bubble is blown and the bubble is pricked by you and such as you, Ray.
Some in the media made a case against others in the media.
When you consider the fare which the ABC, the single most important communications force to rural Queensland, has been feeding those viewers down the tube, it is not altogether surprising that they feel disenfranchised, even discriminated against by city-centred broadcasting bureaucrats.
And do you detect slightly more warmth towards our heroine post-election?
Do you think they're fed up with politicians generally, poly-speak and non-core promises and all that sort of thing?
That's all part of it. Yes, it is. You see, they don't trust politicians and
Why should they trust you? Why are you different?
Well, I think you should go and ask the people of Queensland. Why do they look at me as being different?
Now the media has turned its cannon on the Svengali, David Oldfield, who reinvented Pauline.
Liberal member for Warringah, Tony Abbott, said,
"What he lacks is magnanimity, generosity of spirit, the ability to see the other guy's point of view, sympathy for the underdog and the weak."
But of course, Pauline won't shy away from the spotlight.
Asked by the Herald Sun if she believed she could move into the Lodge, the One Nation leader said,
"Yes."
No wonder she believes anything's possible.
The poll shows the Coalition's primary vote has fallen to 35%, with Labor steady on 39.5% and One Nation at an all-time high of 14.5%.
We can't wait for the next campaign. Good night and sleep tight.